now done at Ole Miss. Big turnover, though, can also be expected at South Carolina. Some expected to see Stephen Garcia's name on that list after the multiple issues he has confronted as the starting quarterback for the South Carolina Gamecocks. There was another issue in the offseason, and there was a lot of talk that maybe that was it for Stephen Garcia. All the signs that we are seeing now is that at least the path is being paved for him to be back as a starting quarterback for South Carolina. How are you going to feel if you see him coming out there leading the Gamecocks?
Well, we were talking about this before the show. I think that this may be the most challenging quarterback that Steve Spurrier has ever dealt with. I think Stephen Garcia is more talented than any quarterback potentially that Stephen Spurrier has had, but he's been equally as confusing off the field and inconsistent. And this is just another example of him not getting it. And I think Steve Spurrier is frustrated. He was frustrated a year ago when we were talking about Stephen Garcia not being the perfectionist that Steve Spurrier wanted in the system and needing to play better. And at this point, I think that Stephen Spurrier is very comfortable with Connor Shaw in a role that to come in and play this year for the Gamecocks.
And also before the show, you'd say you would not rank South Carolina any differently, whether it was Stephen Garcia at quarterback or Connor Shaw at quarterback. What does that say about the weapons surrounding that position?
Well, certainly Marcus Lattimore and Alshon Jeffrey are going to be the workhorse for the Gamecocks on offense, and I think their defense is going to be better. Ellis Johnson, defensive coordinator, and all my conversations with him, he's very excited about his defensive talent coming back this season.
And they have the #1 overall prospect in the ESPNU 150, Jadeveon Clowney, coming to campus. We talked a lot about him on Recruiting Insider. Tom Luganbill, Craig Hobart, the guys with ESPNU Recruiting, said he could go down as the greatest recruit on paper in the history of what they've seen in recruiting. So that's certainly saying a lot. But, Joe, if you're on that team at South Carolina, you've been through all the issues with Stephen Garcia, and yet he's getting another chance. How does that sit with you as another guy that could be vital to the success of that team?
There comes a time as a player when you eventually say enough is enough. Your quarterback is looked at like a head coach to you, and you play for that guy, you get in a huddle with that guy, and you look him in the eye, and you know he's there for you, and you have to be there for him. After a while of these things off the field that are taking him away from your team, you get to a point as a player where you have had enough. Now, Brian talked about Steve Spurrier and his relationship with Garcia. Now, the players and the coach are always different in this, because the coach doesn't have to get in the huddle and look him in the eye and expect him to make a play when you're out there with him and your butt's on the line. As a player, you say, look, enough is enough. Either you're here for us 100% or you're not. I don't know where they are with that, but I know that will be an issue and something they're going to have to figure out for this team.
They want to see the same level of commitment and character in that huddle. I mean, the quarterback is held to a higher standard. That's just the way it is. And Stephen Garcia has played well at times, played not so well at other times, but what he has done off the field gives him no room, no latitude to be that leader on the team. It's just you can't do it.
And it also depends on the backup. If the backup, if the backup's pretty good, you can take a little more.
And that's the interesting situation. They put in Connor Shaw. I believe it was late against Auburn. He ended up throwing the final 2 interceptions in his only 2 drives. But Steve Spurrier has liked Connor Shaw a lot. Just another opportunity perhaps to see the now sophomore get out there for the South Carolina Gamecocks. We've all talked about, though, if everything goes well for South Carolina, especially with the SEC East, we'll be talking about back-to-back conference championships in the division ranks for Steve Spurrier at South Carolina. Mike Sly expected to take the podium next on the SEC Media Days.